Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new video. I came across one of the most interesting and instructive chess games I have seen in a long while, and I wanted to share it with you today. Here in this game, Vasily Smyslov, the future 7th world chess champion at the time, is 20 years old and plays against an established master, Mr. Lilienthal. Today we are reinforcing the moves that we learn with a super nice AI software called Decode Chess. Decode Chess will help us decode move by move of this game and offer us some explanation for every single move. You guys can use this for free in your own games when analyzing. Thank you to Decode Chess for partnering up with me today and sponsoring this video. Smyslov with the white pieces starts off the game with e4, and you'll see before every single move we'll have an explanation for these moves. It's really nice. Okay, e6 is played by the black pieces, and now we go d4 and d5. This opening is called the French defense, and Smyslov chooses knight c3. There's a lot of possible moves in the French defense. There's e5, that's also very known, which is called the advance. I play this. And there's knight d2, which is the tarash. Here, Smyslov plays the winnower defense, or no, it's not a defense, it's just the winnower with knight c3. And there's a lot of moves that black can play here. D takes e4 is one of them. Knight f6 is one of them. There's also bishop b4 being one of them. So all of these moves are possible. Lilienthal here goes knight f6, and after the common e5, Lilienthal does a really weird move in the opening, and it's knight g8. I'm sure this has happened to many of you, in which your opening does a clear weird move in the opening, placing the queen God knows where, or moving the f-pawn really early on in the opening, opening up the king, and you don't know how to really jam into that mistake or even understand the mistake. And here we have the explanation. So usually this knight is supposed to go to d7 to reinforce c5 moves. So the knight on d7 supports the c5. But now knight to g8, and we understand here that this knight is slowing down development. Well, first of all, you wasted 2 moves by going there and back, and also now I cannot castle as quickly because you have your knight on g8 that's still there. And so here, Smyslov tries to punish this knight g8, which is a super passive move, and plays queen g4. Now, queen g4 is a superb move because Smyslov is looking into his opponent's position and taking in all that information and seeing that the black pieces have a very big problem. They want to develop this knight and this bishop to eventually castle, but they can't do so just so easily. This bishop first has to develop. If the knight develops first, it blocks the bishop on f8. So this bishop has to develop and cannot develop to e7, blocks the e7 square for this knight, can't go to d6 because of the pawn, can't go to c5, and can go to b4. But Smyslov plays queen g4 and prevents all of that. You see, queen g4 takes up this g7 pawn and really hints at this weakness and forces h5, which is the first weakness created by Smyslov in this game. Queen f4, and now c5. Really good move by Lilienthal, attacking the center. One of the key moves or ideas in the French defense is that you kind of block in the center with that d5 and that e6 pawn as black, and then you attack it with c5. And so Smyslov takes, bishop takes, activating this bishop, and now we just develop our pieces. Bishop d3 is a really nice move. We're taking up the defense. So we see all here in the Decode Chess why bishop d3 is such a beneficial move. So bishop d3 supports playing castles, also avoids some knight h6 things because white can play castles, supports the c2 pawn. So once you have your bishop here, you're defending a weakness that's already present, so it's a really good developmental move. Prevents playing knight g6 in the future because we would take up this g6 square, and intends to play queen g3 or castles, which is key here because this gives us an insight into our future plans as the white pieces. And so bishop d3, knight b4 attacks the bishop, and black is trying to take up that bishop pair here. The white pieces don't have really of a choice to move this bishop out of the way to prevent this knight from taking it because there's knight takes c2 here. So we take that initiative and use it as castling, so that we have an advantage in development here, as black only has 1 minor piece developed, where we have 1, 2, and a queen, and castling rights done. whereas black still has a bishop, a knight, a queen, a castling to be done, and this is where the bulk of the white advantage lies. So bishop d7, and now white plays bishop e3, winning some initiative and gaining a tempo on this bishop, because now black doesn't really want to take here on e3. Let's just say this variation happens. Here this would let white take with the f-pawn and open up this f-file for this rook and queen to combine as a battery, which is really nice. And so white is just threatening knight g5 here in this position, attacking f7, a weakness. So this pretty much forces this bishop to go back to e7, and now the masterpiece move, the silent killer queen g3, one of my personal favorite moves. Let's wind back and see what Decode Chess has to say about this. Queen g3 is a good move because it threatens the pawn on g7, that's number one, allows the bishop on e3 to guard g5, and then by extension of that, you see under that, to guard h6. And these two criterion will be very important later on in the game. So queen g3, let's just start with this g7 pawn being attacked. Black has no good ways to defend this pawn on g7, either with bishop f8 or with rook h7 having a passive rook, and this bishop being weak for the 5th time this game, and king f8 waiving all castling rights. None of these options are good. Here black is forced pretty much to play g6, and now we've created some really nice weaknesses as the white pieces. Look at all these black pawns on the king side here. They're all having one thing in common, which is they're on light squares, meaning that when all pawns are on one particular color square on the board, the other color square is, by extension of that, weak. So all these dark squares here are weak for the black pieces. And what do we do to trade off black's guard of those weak dark squares around the white squares? We play bishop g5, and this explanation is really nice. Bishop g5 is a good move because it threatens the black bishop on e7 and intends to play knight e2 or queen f4. That's the knight e2, queen f4 is really in the future, really just so here. Bishop g5 intends to trade off this bishop and gain access to those dark squares. Also, added fact, this bishop is pinned to the queen behind it, meaning that black are pretty much forced to give up that such good bishop. So knight h6, we trade off the bishops here, and suddenly these dark squares are so weak. Imagine a knight on f6 with check. Imagine a knight on d6, right? So nice. Rook c1 is such a nice move, prevents black from castling long, and keeps this king on the king side, where the weaknesses already lie, so we can affect these weaknesses and attack the key gem of the position, the king. So black moves on, knight f5, queen f4, and then king f8. This is a very slow move of artificial castling. Black intends to go to g7. It's just really slow. It takes 2 moves, and in those 2 moves, white does something really nice. Knight e2, opening up the c-file and preparing some knight d4 things. King g7, and while that still happens, we have rook c7 going on a second side of the board while we already have a blasting attack here on the king side. And here, this rook is really nice. You put a rook on the 7th, you pin this bishop to the queen, and you attack b7. And you're preparing to double rooks on the c-file. Super nice. Rook c8, and then we take on b7. Black sacks a pawn here to get some counterplay. Smyslov is really good at avoiding counterplay here. He takes the rook once and then plays b3 to just avoid any counters on this b-file. Rook c8 takes up the c-file. Now we play knight d4, trying to trade off this knight on f5. Queen a3. And this is one of the mistakes that I don't like too much. Queen a3 is a mistake here. See the best continuation, queen a3. So the engine agrees that queen a3 is not too good here because after queen a3 is played, the queen is outside of this zone. And now white plays a really nice move, the masterpiece, because the defenders are all out of this zone. This queen has stopped defending f6 and g5, and now we can play knight takes f5. Deflects the black pawn away from g6. So after knight takes f5, you cannot take with this g-pawn because it opens up your king on g7. That's pretty evident. And so here, black is pretty much forced to take with this e-pawn and now undefend this d5 pawn here. Okay, queen g5 here is a good move. It intends to play queen f6 and also enables queen d8, which are 2 pillars of this move. We are opening this queen up on this diagonal. And this is really important. If black ever tries to defend f6, let's say by rook c8 here, this is a move to defend f6 because we're threatening queen f6 check. Here we have what Decode Chess told us, queen d8, attacking this bishop, and let me tell you, this bishop has a finite amount of moves. Really just bishop c8 is the only move, and now we would pick up the pawn on d5. If you're ever curious about a variation, like I'm curious about queen a6 here, taking up f6, I don't know what happens here. Decode Chess also allows you to decode a very specific move. So you just hit the plus sign, which I did, and here we have an explanation of this full line and a breakdown. Here white has a decisive advantage of 3.28, but should be aware of black playing a rook c2. So we play h4 first, rook c2 is coming in, and now we have queen e7. Queen e7 is very harmful in this position, and after queen e6 we have queen d8, and this queen is just devastating in the bottom rank of this position, and white has a really great advantage of the equivalence of a piece up. Lilienthal here decided to play solid and played bishop e6 instead, letting in queen f6, where going on those dark squares, invade and exploit those weaknesses. King moves, and now knight g5, another piece on those weak dark squares, attacking this bishop this time. And here it's really tricky as well. If you go queen a6, this is losing because we have knight takes a7. Such a beautiful move. And here we are going about this bishop being pinned on e6 to the queen on a6. We would just grab the queen, right? And here we're threatening so many things with this knight on f7. We're threatening queen takes g6. We're threatening knight h6. We're threatening knight d6. Everything looks winning. Lilienthal here played rook e8, and this gives a pawn for the final blow of the position. Knight takes e6 is a good move. It removes a supporter of the pawn on f7. So in case f takes e6, we have queen takes g6, and this is completely over. And if the black pieces decide to take with the rook, which did happen in the game, here the back rank is now sore. And here white can play queen d8 check, which was played in the game, king moves, and now queen takes d5. And winning this pawn on d5 is the pivotal moment of this game, the critical life-ending moment. And after queen takes a2, you remember white had a pawn up from previously in the game. Now we had 2 pawns up, and now we have 1 pawn up. And you'll see that this d-pawn is the critical pawn to convert this game for the white pieces. And 20-year-old Vasily Smyslov ends up converting this slowly but surely. Let's see this move by move. Trades a pawn, the a pawn against the b pawn, so he can further concentrate on this passed d6 pawn, makes it passed and protected while it being defended by the e5 pawn, and slowly but surely look at the presence of this d6 pawn, the extra pawn of this position. And here white converts, and after f6, the black pieces resign because the king is pretty much forced to go to f8. And here, white will just pick up these 2 pawns on h4 and h5, not like that, but on h4 and h5, and the black pieces have no play relatively. The rook can't move, the king can't move, it's completely over. Good game. This game was really instructive because it saw how the white pieces attacked vulnerable squares like queen g3, attacking that g7 square, and then making those squares even weaker. Now we had a target of those dark squares. We played bishop g5, trading off that bishop on e7, and then we penetrated in those dark squares, taking out the defender, luring the queen to a3, and then we had some queen g5, queen f6, and knight g5 things. I hope you enjoyed this very instructive game. Thank you again to Decode Chess for sponsoring this video, and see you soon, you guys.